What is going on, everybody? It is Mark Carsley, your host of the Modern Pain Podcast, and just wanted to touch base with y'all. It's been a bit. I've been off the podcast circuit for a little bit. Those of you who have followed me on social media, followed Modern Pain Care on social media, have understood we've kind of taken a little break and stepped back a little bit. Really now just going to focus on the podcast. That's where my interests are. That's where my passions are. I enjoy having conversations with some smart folks, just like we're going to have a conversation this week with Jimmy McKay. A little bit background behind our conversation with Jimmy is he responded to the post I had on Facebook that was talking about, hey, kind of, this is my situation, burned out, not feeling like I'm doing well on any part of my professional life, personal life, any of that stuff, just because I was so overcommitted and stretched thin. And kind of pulling back to just the podcast, he had kind of reached out and said that kind of resonated with him, and he knows exactly that feeling. So the podcast will talk a little bit about some of our similar struggles and some of the difficulties we've had, some of our strategies we use to kind of get through some of these difficult times. And the interesting thing as you'll listen in the podcast is a lot of us go through this, and it's kind of a normal progression in life. I think some of these existential crises that we can sometimes find ourselves in, it's not something I think to think, oh God, we're a faulty human where and I have all these, maybe a mental health issue or something like that. I mean, like obviously we all have mental health, ups and downs in our lives, but I think it's maybe not as abnormal to have some of these questionings of our purpose and of our place and of all these different things in life, especially as we get into our mid-40s like myself. But so hopefully you enjoy the episode. Before I get to the episode, I wouldn't mind if you could just take a gander at our YouTube channel at Modern Pain Care and see if you can jump on and subscribe to the channel. It just helps us get a little bit more reach as we're starting to interview a lot of more guests and really getting some information out there that'll hopefully compete with some of the not so good information that's out there on pain care. So with that said, I'm going to leave it to the episode. Hope you enjoy the interview with Jimmy McKay. Jimmy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So first off, I'm a little intimidated interviewing Jimmy McKay. He's like the Larry King of physical therapy interviews. So I feel like I'm on the other side of this. I'm a little intimidated, but I'm going to roll with this today.
Well, I'm flattered and confused. I feel more like a Fallon because he's kind of a goof, and it's like he's more of like whatever. But Larry was so like intense, and it looked like he never wavered. You know what I mean? Like he was like, I'm going at something, and I'm not going to show you where I'm going, and you're going to go there anyway, no matter who you were.
Yeah, I mean both. I guess I can see maybe a little bit more Jimmy Fallon, but nonetheless, a very accomplished voice in our profession. You've done a lot of great things as far as really getting the word out. Your podcast obviously speaks for itself. A lot of viewership. I tune in from time to time when I'm not trying, buried in my world that we'll probably talk about today. But just wanted to lay a little bit of the background of today's episode for folks. You've probably, some of you who know me have seen that Jared and I kind of really slipped off the podcast scene for a bit. We stepped away, and then I had a post about just, hey, we're shutting down Modern Pain Care. At that time, I had made a post on Facebook shortly thereafter saying, here's where I'm at. Yeah, I just felt like I was like at a tipping point, just really overcommitted, not really feeling like I was successful in any part of my life, like family, work. I work at the University, Midwestern University. Great job, treat me very well. I have no complaints there, but 20 years in the clinic, it's been for me, just feeling like I was at this kind of like crossroads point in my career where I wasn't sure, where I wanted to go. Is this what I want to do? Is physical therapy something I want to roll with for the rest of my life? Just feeling like I'd kind of done the fellowship thing, I did the clinical specialist thing, and I was like, God, this feels like there should be more. It feels like there's something missing, but
yeah.
So I made the post and just said, hey, this is where I'm at, and really going to step away from things. We're not going to do any more courses with Modern Pain Care. We're going to just focus on the podcast. And that's where this is what I enjoy. I enjoy having conversations with folks like Jimmy and others. And so really after making that post, I was shocked because I had quite a few people who had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm right there with you. I really can definitely have been there, currently am there. And so it was nice to get a lot of support for some people. One of the people that supported me was yourself, sir. And I really appreciated that. So I thought, hey, let's come on and chat about it.
About it.
Things we're dealing with.
You said a few things there, and I'm not a psychologist, but I play one on the podcast, which is like you've been doing something as a physical therapist in clinic for 20 years, right? And I think, we're probably close to the same age or definitely the same generation where it was like, you go through education, you get a degree, and then you ramp up to whatever your highest throttle is, and then you put your head down and you do that. You are now on a train track that does not deviate from when you are ramped up, you got a college degree or a master's degree or doctorate, and then you just try to get to the highest tier as you can and then ramp up. And I don't think that's the way we operate or should operate. And I think that especially the last 10 years has shown you don't have to do any of that stuff. I mean, how many times do you hear I was working with a guy the other day. He's like, he was a lawyer, then got a degree from Northwestern in business, and then he went, I'm going to film school. But like, that's a bad idea if you're coming from a traditional point of view, because like, dude, you're a lawyer, ramp up and then do whatever the max is of that. But nobody asked if you were happy while you were doing that. They didn't say like, do that as long as you're happy. They said, do that. And I think I messaged you like I can relate is I've been doing my podcast for 7 years, and I hit like, I call it the suck, which is like whenever people are like, I'm going to do this new project. I'm like, is this something like you'd like stand in the rain to do or something, or like plow through or wake up at 4 a.m. to talk to someone from the other side of the planet? And they're like, well, maybe not. And I'm like, then this isn't going to be consistent. And that's okay, because also I've double backed on like, dude, do it, try it. What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? But I've come through that where a couple times in this podcast where I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. It doesn't feel good. And I see it on my schedule and I'm like, I have to versus I get to. And I'm guessing that whatever you said in that post, I was like, I know what that feels like right in my belly.
Yeah. Yeah. It became like, something we started the podcast in Modern Pain Care. It was just a passion project. It was like, man, we get the opportunity to talk about issues
I
that are
remember
pertinent to
that,
us.
man. I remember
Yeah.
like you were like, what mic do I get? I'm like, no. I mean, I'll tell you that, but like, why are you doing it? And like, you had like, a great answer, because usually I don't talk people out of anything and I don't talk people into anything, but you like checked all the boxes. You're like, I can't wait. Like you use action and emotion words. And I'm like, nah, you're set. You're good. Go ahead. You're fine. Now I'll
Yeah.
tell you what microphone to get, because that's lipstick on the pig, right? The pig's got to matter.
100%, 100%. And for those who don't know, Jimmy has helped us a ton in our podcast. He's really a lot of the audio intros and outros and all that stuff, and was a big force into me starting the podcast, and somebody you should talk to if you're ever thinking of
Yeah.
starting a podcast
No
yourself.
problem.
But yeah, I can definitely relate. It's been something where, and then I started to spread like, okay, I'm going to do online courses, and then I'm going to do this
Because you
podcast.
see other people doing it, and I gotta compete.
Yeah, and you know how it is in the physical therapy world of social media too, especially when you're doing con ed, man. The
Yeah.
vampire, the folks, the fangs come out, and everybody's just like on the attack. Like you say anything, and folks are ready to jump down your throat. And I guess that's part of just being on social media in the world we live in with people. But it just became something that I dreaded doing. I was like, I don't, teaching courses. I actually like it. I like teaching and lecturing more at the DPT level, but also in post professional stuff as well. But just some of the other stuff that comes with it, and the logistical challenges
Oh,
and
I bet.
scheduling courses and all that stuff. It was just, to say the least, it was just getting to be too
I
much.
I walked into that. People were like, "Hey, man, like you've helped people with launching podcasts or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. It's kind of fun. Like, why don't you do a course on it?" I was like, "Well, that's yeah. Look online. Everybody's got a course." And I was like, "Totally." And then I was doing it, looking deep in the camera's eyes, and I was like, "This is what you should do." And I hated it because I was talking to myself, and I was like, "Where's the other half of it?" I'm like, "I need the person to give me the juice." I'm like, that's it didn't need to be podcasting. It could have been whatever, and I would have got juiced, but with the other person. I need that. And that wasn't there. It's funny that you met, you talk about like the social media, circle, because Jared and I were we did the Oxford debate together. We were on a team. We were on Team Pro for the Oxford debate. The
Mhm.
last one the APTA did. They don't do it anymore. Not yet. I'm trying to get them to bring it back, but don't tell anybody. But tell everybody. And for those Oxford debate, it's a tongue-in-cheek debate in which 3 people are on there. You're assigned a prompt, and our prompt that year was, is social media hazardous to the profession of physical therapy? And then you're just assigned 3 people to pro, 3 people to con. And it is, the goal is relevant, serious points. You're not debating the people on the other side, which was like Rich Severin, Ben Fung, and what
Was
was
Karen Litzy on the other side?
Karen Litzy was on my team. So it
Gotcha.
was me, Jared, and Karen Litzy. And then it was Ben Fung, Rich Seven, and Jodie Pfeiffer, who had passed away. She was a very pleasant woman. She was terribly nice. And I knew her before the Oxford debate. Jodie Pfeiffer. She passed away not long ago. She was fantastic. So you're not debating the other people. You're like tongue in cheek, mic drop, almost that MTV wildin' out thing to not the people. Never argue. That's what ad hominem. Never argue the person. Always the issue. So Jared is like, so we wore Breaking Bad suits because it was
I was there.
hazardous.
I remember this.
Is social media hazardous? I was like, we got to do something funny. Breaking Bad's big. Let's do the yellow Tyvek suits, goggles, respirator, gloves, boots. We did that, and I remember like I knew we were going to win because we were assigned pro. And the other team's argument, or some of the argument, was like, but you guys, look, 3 of you have podcasts or whatever. You're on social media. And I was like, dude, but my counter, I went 6 out of 6. So I was the closer. And I came out to Thunderstruck. I was ready to go. And I remember just being like, well, we're not asking if it's good or bad. You asked if it was hazardous or not to the profession. And, this hammer could help me build a house, but this hammer has a warning label like, do not strike another human in the head with it because it could be hazardous to that, right? So it can be. And I think one of Jared's arguments was like, hey, this is the highlight reel, man. I'm renovating my house. I'm not posting pictures of like me covered in sawdust and like having a freaking panic attack because I'm still renovating my house after a month and a half. Like, you don't see that. I might post a picture of like the hardwood floors I just laid down. Look how shiny these are, right? And that can lead you when you even when you know that all you're seeing is everybody else's best moments and best days and the best of everything. You're still like, why aren't I? This guy's got 3 courses. This girl's got 20,000 Instagram followers. I am so far behind. And it's like, I don't know. What are you aiming at? And I was discussing this with someone the other day, and they said, how did you know you're a physical therapist? How did you know when your podcast was successful? And I was like, oh, like how many downloads or how many episodes? And I was like, oh, no, I dumped it down for myself. My goal was with every episode, have fun, learn one thing. So if I went into it and like that was the basement, so it was like, was it fun? Yes, binary, check. Did you learn one thing? Check. Then we're good. Then do that 1,000+ times and we're okay. But we're such big dumb animals in that we fall for the trick. And even when we know we're playing the trick, we're dumb.
Yeah. It kind of strikes back to that. It's,
Creeps
feeling
in.
like God, everyone's got so much, they have these many followers, they're doing all this and these things, and my voice shouldn't matter and all these things. I mean, that definitely goes into some of the burnout stuff as well. It's just this
Sure.
constant feeling of like, part of this discussion, do I know enough? Have I done enough? And, it's just, and that never leaves. And I have DPT students who, talk about like, I don't like, they're going to go on clinicals or second years and
Yep.
they're all nervous. Like you were, I was, and I
Totally.
I'd be more worried if you didn't feel that way
Correct.
going into the clinic, because an overconfident clinician is probably the more dangerous clinician in your
Correct.
situation. So, thing that we all deal with, it's just this voice that you just have to be able to like understand is going to be there. I like to say you're never going to have those doubting voices or these. I think that's unrealistic. I don't think that's how we as humans work. There's those challenging voices. You just got to have, some you interject into that dialogue, that made inner dialogue in your head that kind of compete with things, and also don't, because we're also dumb animals, because the only thing we remember in our practices and our careers is the bad thing that happened.
Yeah.
Of course, 9% of things that went really well.
We forget those. From advice I got in like episode 5 from another PT podcaster, Eric Mera, he was like, listen to it because that's from 2015. That's like 7 years ago. But the idea that resonates still, which was because his show is PT Inquest, how about research, and he's like, when you get into arguments anywhere in person or on social media about research, it's like, well, the science says. He just uses the word now. He's like, this is what we know now. This is what we understand now. And your advice to not have to paint yourself into a corner. It's like, dude, how much stuff did we know? And I'm using air quotes on a podcast. We knew this is it. This is the truth. 20 years ago, they were like, oh, upon further review, hey, actually, it's not. It's actually a mix of this. And you throw that word now in there. It's like, this is what we know now. That's the ultimate like get out of jail free card. But it also like maybe that fall off the hook is if you can say, or even this is how I understand now. Maybe I'm wrong. And like, that's why like Eric Mera, well, first of all, he doesn't argue with people. He's just like, I'm going to explain it as now. And if that's proven wrong later, then good for science. And science is a process, right? It's supposed to change. we're supposed to get our minds changed. And I heard someone say, they brought this up, the phrase "you've changed," and it's often said as a negative. Like someone's like, "Hey, man, I knew you back in the day, and like you've changed." And the person retorted, "Isn't that the point?" And I was like, "Oh, mic drop. That's the point, man. The point isn't get to a point, throttle up, and then just be and get bigger. It's not. I don't know. The point is grow and change. And maybe if you don't like it, you didn't change, and which was the point. Those things keep me comfortable."
Yeah. No, I think that's a great example. I agree. Eric's just a good dude. I've never really
So
personally got to chat with Eric all
very
that
sweet.
much. I think we've maybe exchanged some messages over social media and stuff, but huge respect for what he's done, of course. And
Yeah.
um, I totally agree. Science is something that's mobile. It's never going to be stationary. There's going to be new articles, and and students struggle. I know, and clinicians struggle because they get enamored by something, and then God, a week later, the research is saying, well,
Right.
maybe we need to
I
think twice about
I
that.
get it for students, right? Because
Yeah.
as a student, you're like proving like I belong here, right?
Mhm.
And you're climbing, right? I always felt like I was climbing. And to climb, you need something sturdy to hold on to pull up, to reach for the next thing. And you grab onto something. The problem is you have to let it go to be able to do the next thing. But like, this is what I know. I know this. I need this to be sturdy under my feet. Or then how do I know where I am? And so I understand why students grab onto things. I was guilty. I was no more, innocent than anybody else doing that. I was very guilty. So I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't, people fake it till you make it, or I don't know. I don't think any of those answers are right. I think it's like, why are you here? And how are you going to get out of this if you don't actually know? Asks. My ultimate cheat code was I started a podcast. My angle was I don't know anything because I'm a second year student. I know nothing. Hey, do you know some stuff? And then I would just say, teach me. And then I would just fold my hands under my chin and look at them lovingly and go, teach me all that you know. But also, this is what we know now. This is what we know now.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Students, there is a degree of like clutching for stability and for a
Totally.
foundation, and when the foundation's getting challenged, it's a massively destabilizing thing when you're like about to roll into the clinic for the first time and you can't be pulling the rug out from under me and
Right.
telling me these things don't work. So I've had to really temper my like, "Hey, we're learning special tests of the shoulder this week," and I'm like, inside I'm like, well, really the research is saying those aren't really all
Right.
that useful.
Right. Right.
But, obviously I'm not, trying to temper that discussion with students, say, "Hey, yeah, let's know them. Let's be able to communicate with our orthopedic colleagues and all these things." They're one piece of information, but yeah, there's just, it's challenging with that for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Rolling back to burnout, because we've segued a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just curious, like in your experience with, it sounds like you've been dealing with some stuff
Yep.
on the burnout front, and kind of that almost like existential crisis. Maybe
Yep.
sometimes we experience in parts of our career. I know definitely, as I alluded to earlier in the podcast, that's kind of been me as far as, is PT going to be me for the rest of my career? Is there something else? Is there something I can get challenged with? Feeling like I've kind of like gotten into this day after day groundhog day where I don't feel challenged, and
Ugh.
and different things. But I'm just curious from you, what's been your experience in that?
So in the beginning, podcast professionally and like my day job professionally paralleled, right? So podcast professionally was like I started this show because I wanted to have fun and learn something. And then what happened was we had some success. And then I was riding that success. And then of course I'm watching what other people are doing and I'm going, I'm having some success, but not that success. Or I need to be having more success. So I changed. So I was like, well, let's get fancy. Let's get sophisticated here. And let's start changing how let's get smarter. And I was like, okay, we haven't done an episode on aquatics in in 8 months. We're gonna do aquatics because that's what the audience wants. And then we're gonna do where's our neuro episode? Have we done a neuro episode? So I was like focused on I needed to be all the things to all the people. I'm playing first base, I'm playing shortstop, I'm catching, I'm playing right field, and I'm running around. And by the time the inning is over, I'm beat and we're losing 42 to nothing. And I'm like, no one's winning here. And then I was standing in my basement where I used to record. And I remember like an episode had just ended. And I'm not going to say who it was. It wasn't their fault, but I wasn't into it because I was checking a box. I was like, we need to do this episode because we haven't done it in a while. And the algorithm, we're not covering a base here. And I remember just being done with the episode and I live alone. And I remember just the sound of The guest was very nice and hung up. And I remember I was standing there and I was like, what the hell? I don't even know what I was asking because like I didn't care. And I was like, maybe we shut it down. Maybe this is the shut it down. So that moment that I'm describing, cold, dead quiet in my basement after faking it through a 45-minute interview, I was like, that moment, that's what I was thinking of when I read your post. I was like, been there. And I was like, okay, this thing's been around for at that point, it was like 6 years. I was like, okay, 6 years is a long, I don't know. Is that a long run in podcasting? Who the hell knows? And I was like, I think I'm done. So we took a month off. And then I was like, someone told me a great phrase once a long time ago, and somehow it got back in my brain. It was, don't remember who brought you to the dance. It's like, remember who brought you to the prom, because like they're bringing you home. So I was like, why'd you start this stupid thing? And I was like, I don't know. I was confused and overwhelmed, and I felt lost in PT, but a microphone made me feel powerful, or at least like good enough to be in the room, right? I don't know anything, but I know how to ask who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I was like, yeah, but I was doing that. And I was like, yeah, but did you care? So I'm having a conversation with myself, which is why I should be committed. But I lost sight of what I mentioned before, which is, were you having fun? No. Were you learning anything? I don't know. I couldn't pay attention because it wasn't fun. So no. So you were missing the very basic tenets of what got you to the dance. So I was like, okay, scrap the neck, delete everything. We're taking a month off. And I'm just going to look for people who when I see I get to talk to, like earlier today, I was like, oh, I'm talking to Mark at 8:30 tonight. Cool. And I'm like, that'll be fun. Oh, I know what we're talking about. We're talking about that post. Good. So all throughout the day, I'm like, okay, yeah, make sure, maybe you could bring that up, or, ooh, that'd be interesting. Instead of I have to, it was like get to. And then that little itty bitty change went ding, and it was fun again. And I would have loved to like been able to, in the moment, like poll the audience. Like, do you like this anymore? Because I bet you they would be like, I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, but like something ain't right. So I don't know, maybe you jumped the shark. Look up that reference if you're under the age of 40. That's a weird one.
Yeah.
But so that was it. And then professionally too, it's the same thing. I'm here to do a thing. I got a great job. It's a good title and a 401k and health benefits. So like, put your head down, dude. And then I was like, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to do cool stuff. And if we're not, push back. But that's hard. Like that requires guts. But I think everybody has it, because one day my dad gave me this great advice. One day we're all going to be dirt, man. Like my mom passed away. I was like, do I bring this up or whatever? But I've talked about it on my show enough that my mom passed away. She had a stroke a year ago, pretty much this month, and then passed away in July. So it's like she had a stroke, and then 3 months later, she passed away. I'll tell you, man, if you are going through like someone sick and dying, she had pancreatic cancer after the stroke. My mom really hit the trifecta. Like she drilled it. She had this weird muscle rhabdo sort of issue. Then she had a stroke. Then she had pancreatic cancer. I was like, my mom knew how to go out, man. Go out with a big, big bag. But while you're sitting there next to your mom, like nothing, like I'm not checking my phone for like Zoom meetings. I'm like, I am not here. Nothing exists. I'll call you in a week or 6 weeks. I don't know. Bye. And credit to like my boss and the team. They were like, do not email Jimmy. Do not call Jimmy. Do not text Jimmy unless it's to say, like, I miss you. And it really did it brought everything back to zero, which is like, dude, everything can change tomorrow. Are you happy with yesterday, today? And are you looking forward to tomorrow? If the answer is no, like, please change it, because you can, and you deserve to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in some of those, challenges we go through in life, and really puts things in perspective. And it kind of it strips us down to zero, like you
To
said,
zero.
and really gives us that opportunity in a gut wrenching and emotionally, taxing way to kind of really figure out what things are important. I think,
What matters? Yeah.
yeah,
It
you're
sucks that it actually takes like someone dying or someone getting sick or something to do that. It does, right? It sucks that it's that. But but you have that. I don't know. Like that's like that's one of the things I took away from that situation is like, my mom didn't die overnight. I had a few weeks with her. She had my complete attention, right? I'm sitting there with her. And I had that time, and I was like not thinking about work. So when I needed it, a few weeks after, I was like, what do we have here? I'm not going, why would I go back to the thing before? I want it to change. You've changed, Jimmy. Yeah, isn't that the point? Like, okay, what do we love about this and what can we carve out? Let's focus on the love and the lesson to carve out. Because I just proved for the last 6 weeks, I wasn't returning phone calls. World still spun, sun rose, sunset, everything was fine. Now let's do good stuff. Now you have 100% of me back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, sorry you had to go through that. It's can only imagine. My dad passed away about a year and a half. Well, actually, longer than that now ago, and
All right.
it's hard with parents. I mean, I didn't have the best relationship with my father, but it kind of opens up wounds and different things, and kind of makes you
Yeah.
kind of again reprioritize things and really put in perspective what's important for you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's too when you're getting pulled in 15 different directions, and we do have this culture now that it's like, man, you got to hustle, you got to have this side hustle going here, you got to have your like mentioned the online course, your podcast, you got to be
Yep.
on these channels, you got to
Yep.
be everything to everybody, and it's just some of those situations can help us just kind of none of that shit really does it really matter. I mean, is it something that in the end are you gonna put that on your headstone that you had 21K followers on IG? Maybe some
Right.
people will, who knows? But
Right.
um,
I like so have fun and learn something was definitely like baked into the cake, right? And this is for a podcast. I tell my story to students because schools will bring me in like tell your story. And like you could like that's a situation to be egotistical, right? And like, dude, I love talking about myself because it's my story. I'm excited about it, right? But I also like to make sure I like pay attention to the audience and like when they leave, I'd like for them to have taken something away and not, ooh, that guy's cool. That's not what I want them to take away. My takeaway is I connected two dots that were not there wasn't a straight line between them, but we know that there is a straight line between any two dots, right? So I connected radio and PT. Didn't make sense until you look backwards and it does. My message is what's your dot? Like mine's radio. So I don't want you to be another me. Like, what are you going to do? Go get a job at a radio station for 15 years and come back to PT to be like me? No, don't. But what's your dot? And what are you going to bring to PT? Because, oh my gosh, we need it. We need outside stuff. If someone said to PT, oh, you haven't changed. You're like, yeah, thank you. It's like, no, that's the point. You're supposed to change. That is supposed to happen. So I took something away from even my mom's passing, right? At CSM this year, we threw a big charity party. And I was like, because my mom had made a big deal to tell me, like, how proud she was of me while she was sick and my brother and yada, yada. And I remember, like, I'm going to do something for my mom. It's really for me, right? Like, it's to remember my mom. I was like, I'm going to throw a party because she told me I threw a party in 2017 at CSM for an ALS organization. And she was like, I'm like, I'm proud of you. And I remember, like, that's the moment, right? Like, I love you is she's your mom. I'm proud of you means like I love you is baked in.
Mhm.
I'm proud of you is you did something, right? It's like your birthday. It's like you didn't do anything, but you get a birthday, right? Everybody got a birthday. That's the I love you from mom most of the time. But the I'm proud of you is like you did something to remember like that you didn't have to, right? That took work. So I wanted and that made me excited. That was I could have looked at that and said, is this Jimmy starting another course or doing another thing? But I got energy from that instead of was like I have to do that. I don't know. Seek those things out. What are they?
Yeah. If it's one thing, this whole process of like really self-reflecting and working on myself and figuring out like it sounds like you did a lot of introspection and
Yeah.
self study and different things, and obviously had some pretty tragic circumstances that kind of forced the issue a little bit as far as
True.
really
True.
prioritizing what's important in life. But yeah, it's helpful, and I think to me less is more, as far as like
It's true.
trying to be everything to everybody. You are no one to anybody. It's not a sustainable path. It's one that's if people can do it, there's I don't know too many that do it well.
It's
Maybe
I,
you're
I I think the people that do it well who don't burn out. So do you know who Marcus Lemonis is? The prophet?
the name I've heard, but I'm not familiar.
So Marcus Lemonis is like a guy. So he's like he could be a shark on Shark Tank, right? Everybody knows Shark Tank, but he's a guy who like it's like the reverse. It's like someone calls and goes, "Hey Marcus, I've got a great business, but we're failing and we can't figure out why." He shows up and he's got money. He's an investor, but he's really good at like he does like evaluations or like it's not an autopsy because the business isn't dead, but it's an eval. Like he lifts the hood and kicks the tires. But he breaks it down to these three things, which is the three P's. And we love things that come in threes, right? Musketeers, amigos, blind mice. And we love alliteration. So 3 P's. So it's people, product, process. And when he said this next statement, I was like, no, that's not right. And then I thought about it. I was like, oh, no, that's completely right. He said, people don't run businesses. Processes run businesses. And I'm like, that's not right. And he's like, but a person or people trying to run a business is like trying to play third base, right field, and catcher. You could do it poorly, and you're gonna hate that, and you're gonna be losing 47-0 in the 5th inning. So he goes into businesses and he goes, where's the failure? The failure, if you're a decent business, is in one of those 3. Do you have the wrong people on the team? That can be toxic and ruin it. Is your product just suck? Like, you got it down, but you sell a thing that no one needs. You sell a solution to a problem no one has. Most of the time in the episodes that I've seen and doing introspection, it's process, right? I was editing, I was finding guests, scheduling guests, prepping interviews, doing interviews, editing interviews, creating social media content, scheduling an episode, 2 episodes a week through PT school for 5 years. And if the show is successful, my product was good because people were listening. I'm good. The people involved were me. So I must have been okay. I'm the right guy to do this. But my process sucked. And the minute I was like, this only happened in the last year. The minute I was like, I'm going to teach you how to edit, and I have to stop white knuckling that and let it go a little bit. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to teach you. You're not going to do it just like me, but that's okay. And then I was like, hey, social media content is important, but I don't want to do that. And that gives me anxiety. So you like doing it? Okay, why don't you do that? So I brought people in to build processes. This does not have to just be this is not just podcast success. This is life success or business success or school success. This is in my opinion anyway, because your process without one, you can get crushed. And that to me was where the burnout was from.
Dude, you are definitely striking some chords over here. I've email marketing, editing podcasts, putting online courses together, dealing with payment stuff on payment process, all these different things. It's scheduling guests, dealing with folks that can't log into your online platform.
You're everything.
You're
everything.
Yeah. So kind of similarly torn things down to the foundation. I'm starting to actually strangely bring up processes because I'm actually going to start like drawing out all the processes. They're going to be written out and everything. And then I'm going to start handing it off to where I can just focus on having conversations with folks like yourself and getting good content out there. And then folks can chop it up, put it on social media. We got some great tools out there to make that happen. And I can just enjoy it. And if things happen to where it grows and I can do more with it, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm going to still enjoy having conversations with folks like yourself and others, and I'll be completely happy. I will go to bed at night a happy, satisfied individual. Yep. And I don't, I've learned to be content with things because sometimes there's this culture where like you got to, like I said, hustle,
grind, baby. Yeah. Being busy is like a thing you put on your. It's like, have you seen how busy I am? Isn't that cool? Isn't that fun? It's like I'm guilty of it too, but I'm like, I don't think that is the thing. I think it's being happy and content and those things.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you ever taken, like, I'm sure you've taken this, and everybody in the audience listening has taken one at one point, one of those personality assessments. Mm-hmm. And I took one because I was doing an episode on one. Somebody had done a study or a case report into it was Strengths Finders from this company, right? And they instead of like colors or letters like INJTP or whatever those things are, it was like there are 28 or 25 archetypes, and we'll give you your top 5, and that really shows the type of person you are. So it's like a cheek swab, and here's your DNA. And I took it, and it was fun. It was cute. It was like a horoscope, right? You knew whatever they showed you, you were going to reverse engineer. Oh yeah, that is me. That's me. So mine were like woo, which stands for like winning others over. So Jimmy tries to make everybody like him. And I was like, oh yeah, that is true. Communication was not my first. That was like my 4th. Woo was number 1. And my friend Sky Donovan was like, this does not shock me. And I was like, what do you mean? I thought communication, that's my thing. And she goes, nope, you're a wooer. And I got woo, ideation, futuristic, communication, and something. And I was like, that's cute. This is cute. This is great. But like, I knew that. So it's like, you sort of told me stuff I already knew. So it was like interesting. Now, where the magic happened was we did it all as a podcast team. So 4 of us took this, and then we told each other what we had. We like got together, had a beer online, and we're like, "Oh, I got this and this and this and this is what I mean about it." The real magic happened when I found out the other people on the team were not like me at all. Because I was like, "Don't you just love this and this?" And they were like, "No." I'm like, "Then why are you involved in a podcast?" And they were like, "Totally different reasons." And I'm like, "Oh, Juliet likes tasks, logic, lists, spreadsheets. I get heartburn from those." Here's the screwed up part. I was not giving her spreadsheet tasks to do because I hate them. And it felt like I was punishing her by giving her a crappy thing to do but I want everybody to like me. So I was not giving her a thing that I thought that sucked. So that thing never got done. And I was angry and she was angry and it never got done. And it was all because my personality didn't recognize that she liked this. I was keeping the fun from her, not to be a jerk, but because I hated her version of fun and I wanted her to like me. So I wouldn't give her the punishment of doing it. And the minute I realized that, I was like, "You like all this crap?" And she's like, "I love it. This is why I'm here." And I'm like, wow, eye opening. So it was cute to know your own stuff. It was mind blowing to me to know the other people and what made them tick. And that's why it was a presentation at ELC a couple years ago using this particular strengths finders in clinical education to work in groups, but then to also, when you go out to clinic, realize other people are not like you. They have they have eyes and ears and a nose. That might be where the similarity stops. Understand that some people are super close to yours and some people are 180 degrees away.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of clinical things you can take from that. I mean, that's one of the
Huge,
things we've pushed in the
huge.
podcast is like, you got to understand, you got to be able to level with a unique human in front of you clinically. Sometimes it's going to be like, no problems. You just blend with it. It's that person might be a fellow wooer. And
Yeah,
sometimes they're not. Sometimes there are people that
correct.
are like, need the spreadsheet, need the algorithm, need the, kind of a little more reserved way of going about life. But that's the beauty of our job is we get the opportunity to see how do we connect with that unique person who isn't maybe like me. I mean, I think
Right.
those are the fun patients I used to
Yes,
dread because I had nothing to offer them because I was so stuck on being me and fitting in with
correct.
me where no, it's just
Correct.
it's an amazing challenge. You get to like say, how do I take me who is definitely not like that person, but how do I find a way to bring something out of that person to get them
Yeah,
to move in a direction that's hopefully positive for them. So yeah, I think that's what makes me excited to go to the clinic each day, not, the slam dunk patients that are gonna,
yeah. Did
jive
you
with you and you meld with well and all that stuff.
Are there any tools or books or now I'm like perpetuating the thing or courses that you've taken or read that helped you with this? I did one. The one for me was, and I think I saw you, was it you posting about this or whatever? Was Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference? Did you read that?
I
He's a
didn't.
former FBI hostage negotiator, but he's like, so it's called Never Split the Difference, negotiate as if your life depended on it. And like lives actually did depend on him
Sure.
with Chris Voss. He's like, I couldn't go to work and be like, you have 10 hostages? All right, how about you give me 5 and you kill 5 and we'll be even. Like, you can't split the difference in some negotiation. But he went through, he's like, I didn't negotiate with hostage takers. He's like, I was talking with humans, trying to learn from them. It was one of the few books I read 3 times and took notes. It shouldn't make any sense why a physical therapist should read a book about hostage negotiation, but it's not. And it was a definite click, 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 click moment for me. That was a good one. What's something that helped you?
I think a couple things. Like when I went through fellowship, I thought like, oh
Mm,
man, I'm gonna get this thing figured out. I'm gonna be a fellow, and you know, world will not stop me. And then I saw mentors of mine just struggling with the same patients, and thankfully around that same time we got introduced to pain science. We had great faculty. Then we had Steve George and Joe Bialowski teach us why manual
Steve
therapy works.
George.
It was a huge aha moment of like, you know what? We're not mechanics. We don't fix people like their cars. You have to actually just
Right.
understand the human being and see what's going on in their life around what's their pain diagram or things that you're previously trying to quantify and just, make into some objective black and white thing where
Put on
humans
the
just aren't
EMR.
that way. And I think that's been the
Yeah.
biggest thing that's helped me to start being successful with chronic pain patients and different things. And
Did I ever
I,
tell you the Steve George story?
you have not.
So this is a quick one. So I was still a student and I was podcasting at my dresser because like that's where, because I didn't have a standing desk. And so I would put my laptop and put my camera at eye level. And this is when I was a third year student and I got Steve George on. I was a little nervous. So I'm like trying to hype myself up, got the headphones on before I get started. And it starts, I pour a beer because obviously it's a pint cast, right? I got this beer and I was drinking something I don't normally drink, was like a brown stout. It's a very brown beer. This comes into play in a second, why it's so important. And I get there and I don't script anything, but I have like his intro sort of prepped, right? Say something cute, funny, get him to haha, and then it eases the tension and then we can get into it. I'm halfway through like saying something cute about Steve George and I talk with my hands and I hit the beer and this pint of beer, I'm standing at my dresser and the drawer is sort of half pulled out at my knees and I just put laundry away. So it's like 28 folded t-shirts and the brown beer is now dumped into the drawer onto white t-shirts. And I'm looking at this, but I'm a woo. So my job is just keep looking at the camera. Nothing happened. Keep right here. And meanwhile, I'm like a layer of sweat. I'm a glazed donut because I'm sweating and we never stopped the interview. We never, whatever. I wind up like doing the whole thing, hang up, of course, do laundry again. I catch up with him years later and he goes, I had no idea. But as I plowed through, because you were Steve George and I was nervous, I was still a student. And now looking back, I probably just kept going because I'm a woo.
Well done, though. That's impressive to manage that
I'm sure
situation on the fly.
I was stuttering for the first 45.
Speaking of
T-shirt.
sweating, our house, we just cooked some food that was a little bit on the more fragrant side. So my wife airs out the other part of the house. That kicks on our furnace, and it is boiling in this office right now. I just realized, like, oh my god! I got on there and I'm looking in my. For those of you who are checking it out on YouTube, hopefully you're enjoying the glistening forehead that's been going on all day. But it's because I have a literal sauna in my podcast studio here. That's I need.
I
to,
like it.
Yeah, I was gonna go just jump up and hit a fan, but I figured I shouldn't. The camera view. But Jimmy, man, I would love to continue this conversation longer. I just, out of respect for your time.
Hey, how long have we been talking?
What's that?
How long have we been talking? 41 minutes.
41 minutes. And you know, it seems like it's been 10. So, I mean, we might need to do this again. Literally shook your hand and talked for 5 seconds over in San Diego. It was just
CSM is a joke. You can't do anything at CSM.
Yeah, it's just like there's a million things going on, and you're like,
well, hold on a second. Before we're done though, where are you now? Since that post was a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, where are you now? Is it? Have you self-reflected enough to like at least? I want to know how you feel. I don't really care about what you want to do, right? It's feel first, then do. So where are you now in terms of feeling?
You know, I'm at peace. I don't have this like internal pressure on myself. I feel like I've taken some weight off my shoulders. I feel like, you know what, just do something you enjoy. Like you kind of alluded to a bit. Just, you know, I get to talk to people and have a good conversation, and hopefully it reaches a clinician, maybe a patient that resonates with and can help somebody out. And if that happens, man, job well done, and I'm happy with it. And I don't this zest or this kind of push to like be more and hustle and work and work and work and work. I just feel like
it's a race to the bottom, man.
Yeah, it's a race to like just non-healthy. I mean, there's a reason why you sometimes see healthy executives, you know, passing away or, you know, in their 40s of a heart attack.
Correct.
It's just humans aren't meant to run like that. And some people can. Granted, there's the people out there that do it, but it's not the way I wanted to live, and it's
not me either.
Not the way I was gonna enjoy myself. So it's been great. It's been the weight lifted off my shoulders, and I'm just enjoying things. Like I've just sat back in my university and just really trying to reflect on, man, I'm pretty lucky to have this job and really be able to be surrounded by students, and I have a very supportive, you know, coworkers and things. So, man, life's good.
The great quote, like, you know, the you from 10 years ago would be like just ecstatic about where the you now is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny how we went through every day for the last 10 years and now it's not enough. It's like, dude, it's more that where you are now is where you dreamed of being 10 years ago. Like marinate in that as you sweat in your office, like, you know, really marinate in that and recognize like, that's a big deal, man. That's a big deal. Good for you. Good.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's something that I think, it's been a pretty challenging experience, but I feel like it's one that hopefully you guys found some value in us sharing a little bit of some of the challenges we go through. Because no matter how successful that person you're seeing on social media looks, they're going through some things, or they
Having
have, or
some.
they might currently be
Yeah.
going through it. So, just
What
know you're not
Robin
alone if you're feeling like you get some struggles and you're having some times where you're doubting yourself, what you're doing, and if it's what you want to
Yes.
do for the rest of your life. Just recognize that's probably being a normal person, but there's a lot to be thankful for. Like you said, to like think back those 10 years of where you were then and where that person 10 years ago might think of what you're doing now. They'd probably be pretty pumped with what you're doing.
Hell
So
yeah.
take some joy in that, and
Yeah.
just learn to enjoy each day and take it as it is, and not try to make it some big pressure packed situations of something you have to like go out there and hustle your brains out to achieve. And if you don't, you're some sort of failure. It's just
Nah.
life ain't worth getting that stressed over things.
It's
So
not. Yeah. One day we're all gonna be dirt, man. Like, have a great ride before that,
words to
Enjoy
live
it.
by. Words to live by for sure. Well, I appreciate your time today, Jimmy. I hope you have a fine rest of your evening, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.